essentially something dangerous, essentially bedrohend. Was ist bedrohend?
Threatening.
Huh? Threatening. Yes. And in the first scene, where there is one sentence at the beginning of Lucrece. Ne volucri ritu flammarum moenia mundi diffugiant. It's a sentence, maybe you might know the work De Natura Rerum of Lucrece, one of the most beautiful poetic scientific works. So I say scientific because, of course, it's not scientific in our sense, but he tries to uncover the myth, to think about how the movements of the planets, how does it work? What is the power holding together the planets? Why do we hear? How does the sound move in the space? How do we see? And he has his theory that particles are moving in the air and are reconnected in our brain. So it's with a wonderful, strong and poetic language he describes. And there is one sentence. Ne volucri ritu flammarum moenia mundi diffugiant means if like the fire, the walls of our cosmos would explode. Yeah? We would lose the ground under our feet, and we would be lost in the nothing, in the void, and this is the situation. Something happened, but we don't know. With the situation in our world as well. Things are changing so fast that we don't know if tomorrow we still have our jobs, or we still have clean water, or we still can breathe clean air. Things are transforming too fast, and in this first scene, the prologue, you can see. Yeah, that's fine. You see now the whole score. I talked yesterday about the form, this kaleidoscopic shortcuts, bar by bar. So these are the layers interpolated, and for example, this particle has later on another consequence. So there is always one element repeated, a new one comes, this new one is repeated, and so on. It's a slow processing structure. And later on, there is an extreme time is extremely stretched, and only this sentence, ne volucri ritu flammarum moenia mundi diffugiant, is stretched to about 8 or 9 minutes. Yeah, like the changes of the vowels in slow motion, like a permanent fall in the in the empty space. Maybe we could see a little bit later, page about. Yes, so, I'm not able to.
Yes.
Yes.
You can.
Yes. Okay. Fine.
Back.
Yes. Later. Yes. This is the. This mentioned slow motion part, and I wanted to explain just briefly the harmonic structure. It's a quite simple idea. I wanted to imitate this slow vocal changes. Wah. So it means to imitate the change, constant shift of the spectrum. You see here very small intervals and glissandi between a quarter tone or half tone, but never more than a half tone. Is there something to write on, or
it's coming?
yeah.
It's coming.
Okay. Yes. It's actually a simple idea. If I have a constellation of intervals, a part of the partial, a selection of partials, and I'm searching for the next. I'm moving the fundamental. For example, here I can't read well. It's now I have to go back. Yes. The partials of the B natural. Then I have the partials of the F naturals, but the harmonics are just slightly ascending, not more than a quarter step or a sixth of tone or a half tone step. So there is actually one chord ascending, another one descending. It's a constant shift, and you have always on the first beat you have pure intervals. You have but between a distortion, and another thing is if I have higher overtones in the bass, of course it doesn't sound spectral, because it will sound more as like a multiphonic sound. And I was wondering if this, of course, asks for a quite precise intonation, and I tried it with the solo instrument. It's of course easy to get it, and I was asking myself if it's possible to do it also in the tutti, and in the orchestra. It is possible, yes, but in a limited perspective. So not in fast movements, of course, but it is possible in these structures, for example. The interesting thing is if I've chosen a different amount of partials, so sometimes only 2 of them, sometimes only 11th and 12th overtone, and I have worked with octaves. That's the way to achieve what I wanted, to have a constant shift to a very bright light, an extreme bright sound, from the dark to the bright, a constant movement. Maybe we can listen to, yes, just to repeat. Thank you very much. So this is let's say fundamental B, yeah? And fundamental. And so I have different sequences, different longer, shorter sequences of fundamentals, and they are ascending. And of course, if they ascend, the interval structure here is changing automatically. So, of a half-tone step will change to a quarter step, and so on. And one other chord is descending. And so here we have pure intervals, and between we have beatings. We have distorted, obviously distorted spectrum, but we have this, and this makes this vocal, has a vocal quality. Sometimes I had the feeling also without the choir, after a few bars the choir enters in this structure, but also if the choir was not singing, you had sometimes feel there is sings somebody. So that's the vocal quality I wanted to achieve.
Just a simple question.
Yeah.
Are you realizing all those calculations on paper or with open music, or this type of
yes,
on paper?
So I have, let's say, I have sheet from, let's say, 20. These partials, and I move to yeah, let's yeah. So and I have a sequence of the partial numbers. So even if I don't think, of course, I think in sound and not in numbers, but the sequence is, of course, a sequence of partial numbers. And this is repeated, but not with the same, not synchronized with the repetition of the fundamentals, of course, and that's why you don't have the feeling of a sequence, of the repetition. It's if I reach the same fundamental later, it is already in a completely different region and you don't have the feeling that. And sometimes you hear a clear fundamental or a clear Dreiklang. Was ist Dreiklang? Triad. Yes. Most simple. Yeah. So that's all about that. Just to give you also the practical, pragmatic questions. The instruments, it is necessary, of course. I have used the clarinets, the horns, and the trombones for the shift. The trombones are the only one who do the glissandi, and later on the trumpets with the slides. And this is quite technically not difficult. So it's quite good, simple to do. And the horns, they also have to find just intonation, but it is possible. Yeah? That's quite. I was quite astonished how, if they understand where to hear, and I talked to the horn players, and he said, yeah, they find, but they don't think in fundamentals and overtone, because I suggested them to play, to have a scale of 11th overtone, so as a quarter tone between the half tone step, and they said they don't think like that. They find just a different fingering for the quarter tone and adjust with the ear, and it worked quite it worked well, actually very well with this orchestra. Horns, yes, the trombones are, of course, no, they don't have problems. So, and here you see the choir. I don't. Can you read it or not? Not really. Yeah. Can we make it a little bit bigger? Here, this is the choir. Soprano, alt, tenor, bass. We had 4 singers for each voice. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And here you see, if I have the tempo 60 and I have 6 seconds from here to here, and to change from U to N, yeah, or from, yes, here from U to, from N to U, N, D, Mundi, yeah. Of course, this is extremely stretched movement. Maybe let's listen to this beginning and until the solo voices come in.
So.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
No, no screen for this? Only the song?
I think only this. Yeah. I already mentioned yesterday the recording is just a recording of the opera. Is not the professional recording. Just 2 mics. I think 2 microphones. But maybe we get an idea. Before this extremely compressed melody, brass, horns and trumpets and trombones, is, so the singers, they have hysterically large intervals to sing, and the movement is now in one direction, just always downwards. And what was before in extreme slow motion now is accelerated extremely. I wanted to say something about this slow motion part, which I forgot to tell, but you heard, I'm sure. They're like zonification or Versteinerung of
Petrification.
Yes, petrification, yes, thank you. Yeah. In this structure, out of a vibrato in the strings, there is a movement, a very compressed scale, ascending or descending. It's constantly ascending and descending at the same time. Or there is more than this scale, is or there is just a rhythmic structure which comes out from the beatings. Sometimes you hear them very clearly, the beatings between the brass and instrument. And this now, everything comes to another expressive quality, because it's exploding at that moment, and there is a movement going towards the more noisy sound and towards a silence. And again, sometimes you hear it's always present. This the idea of shifting is always somehow present, but sometimes so extremely stretched that you hear just a central sound.
I have already some questions. What's very successful in this audition is how you reproduce the vocal qualities inside this texture. Are you choosing partial in order to do that consciously, or is it the result out of this
that's
alchemy?
of the shift. Actually, I didn't calculate vocal partials. It's just the fact of the shift and
That's amazing, yeah.
It's happened. Sorry.
The other question was, but the first monologue. What is she speaking about?
Yes, that's what I want to do. It's important, and of course, always the question: is it understandable or not? But you had the title text. So you have seen. I think all of you know the picture of Bruegel. It is hanging in Vienna in the Kunsthistorischen museum. Incredible, fantastic picture of a frozen time. Everything is frozen, and even the bullet of the hunter. You see that there are details, smallest details, and the picture is not that big, but what he is showing in the video is, of course, he comes closer with the camera, and you see everything. That's fantastic, and you see this frozen bullets which comes out of the fire, the roof, the chimney of a house and fire. People are trying to come.
Climb the roof.
Sorry, to
climb on the roof.
Yeah, to climb on the roof. Yes, and so there are many stories in this, and one of these stories is the libretto. So, but it was an important step to go out of this huis clos situation of people enclosed in a room. But it's the space is open now. That it's starting in this picture, and the fascinating thing for me is always. It's on the first look, it's idyllic winter illustration, but on the second, on the third look, it's extremely it's an apocalyptic situation. You have in the middle of the picture you have the birds, and actually the picture is seen from the perspective of the bird, and in the very middle there is a trap, birdfalle, and a vogelfalle, trap, a bird trap. You don't see it if you, but only with the camera you see exactly how this bird trap is constructed. It's just a door and something which hold the door, and you see the grains in the yes. Sorry, the seeds. Seeds, yes. And this was obviously a symbol for the end of the world, and it's a description of the end of the world. At that time, it was a short ice tide, a short
Ice Age.
Ice Age, yes, and people, of course, were asking. Yeah.
Also, the dogs are all the dogs are very skinny.
Yes.
The birds are circling their heads as if to eat them, maybe.
Yes, yeah, I agree actually.
They play curling.
What?
They are playing curling in the background.
Yes. It's if you see the sea behind the horizon, you see the sea is also everything frozen. And it's wonderful. And during the play, these figures, they appear also on stage in a slow motion. The hunters, and they get the part of the play. This what the text about. The text at the beginning just describes the picture. The trees and the dogs, everything, just in a few words describes the picture. And the figure is actually at the beginning not a part of it. It's a dead person. It's a it was the idea comes from Solaris of Tarkovsky. You have this person. You remember Solaris of Tarkovsky?
Yeah.
There, the female, the ex-wife of one of the protagonists returns to, and there is something wrong. So she looks like alive, but there is just a little shift of the reality. She has something in her neck, and you see there is something not. So this small shift was give us the idea to introduce that person.
And just another question. The recording didn't was when is it a core behind? You already a core?
Yes, they already
core.
entered. Yes.
There is a core. We
But,
heard the core.
yes,
but
yes.
very dissimulated.
Yes. They
And
were.
interleaved with the texture of the instrument.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are on stage, but invisible on the right side of the stage. Yes.
It is.
I planned actually to have two positions of the choir. At the beginning, just a part completely melted with the orchestral sound, and then later on stage. But they complained they can't get it sing it by heart. What was actually stupid because it was not so difficult. But finally they complained that they are not on stage doing that. Yes. I wanted to have these two positions, singing the same, but in two different acoustic situations. But here I had to react on the given space of the Staatsoper Berlin. Yeah. If there are questions, if you would like to continue a little bit to listen, or are there some questions we could?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me? I wonder. So, most of your operas, I imagine probably all of them. I'm not sure. Thank you. Are recorded, isn't it? And they're released as a CD. And I see this outstanding mise en scène here with some incredible ideas, full of visual aspects. In terms of when you hear the recorded version of your opera, without the visual aspects, unfortunately, because it's a recording, it is a CD, for example. What's the sort of attitude that, as an audience or a listener, that you need to have without the visual aspect? For instance, well, if you, for example, if you don't speak German and you don't understand the description of the picture,
Yes.
you have actually no idea of what is going on.
Yes.
For example.
Yes. Yes, that's strange how different people are reacting on the facts. They don't know everything behind. Me personally, I like it very much to go in an opera and not to know anything about, and just to try to understand, and I understand some things and I connect it. And sometimes, for me personally, it's important to understand in several steps. And I remember when I studied in Vienna. I went into Wagner Tristan with full of prejudgments because I never heard it until then, and it was just amazing. I didn't understand any word, and I didn't understand one, but I was not so interested in that. And later on, of course, I came to know it, and it was a question in the final examinations of conducting. The question was, where did Tristan come from? And I said, I don't know. I said, of course, a sacrilege. But meanwhile, I think this several ways to understand an art of work, and in this sense also the open arts. It's not only the word. I try to understand it through the sound and first, and of course then always more and more you get a complete picture. But I say how different people are reacting if they don't understand one thing. They are why do I don't understand it?
It's a little bit like it's happening on your opening visually. It's beginning, you see just abstract, cloudy texture,
Yes, exactly. Yes.
and little by little you say, oh, but this is a picture, oh, but this is Bruegel, but I know this picture, and then you understand. I like very much this discovery somehow, and then afterwards it's wonderful when watching the pictures. It's like you. It's exactly the same for me with the meaning in music. When who can pretend that you understand the if not perfect Italian speaker who understand I don't know, l'incarnazione d'epopea, you don't understand every word, but while you enjoy it before to understand it.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, I said Popeye or Tristan or whatever, but I think we all adore these works before to understand every word and to read the libretto. And you are totally right. Sometimes to have the title designate designate one meaning, and your brain jumps on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we lose the rest.
Yes. And everything is a part of the narration. Every person on stage, or everything is a part of this narration which you collect, put together to a semantic to content.
Just one comment. I found this discussion super interesting, because sometimes we are almost asked to explain things we're doing, or to go to something that is very pedagogic. But that's amazing that you're saying that, because you don't need to do that as composers. And I think it have to be with something you said yesterday about thinking about the form as a kind of figure, or something that is unfolding, and
Yes.
That's very nice.
Beyond meaning.
Yes, I have to say, at the beginning, quite skeptic about the video until I've seen it, but finally I thought it's exactly that, this reading the picture, sometimes closer, sometimes from far away. And that's why I thought it fits perfect to this imagination of a form.
Did you work with the picture in mind? With this Bruegel picture in mind? When you composed?
Yes.
This was already, yes. It's already there.
Yes.
And yesterday you mentioned there's a way, a narration or developing a form, like to read the picture.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And it's very clear in this way that you don't follow a narration like A, B, C, or a causality between things, but it's like you go from the birds to the dog, and to the fire, then to the chimney, and it's another way to create a narration.
Yeah. Well, see, for example, I heard it just now when she talks about the Elster, the bird, sitting on a tree. Yes, that one in the middle. And exactly in that moment, and it is in the score. It's not synchronized. The text is not synchronized, but it happened that just in that time when she talks about the bird, the pianist has this high squeezing sound, and of course it is connected. Yeah, it's the bird then. Yeah, but this happens. This is not composed. This and or if she says gefährliche Körner. Gefährliche Körner, she talks about the trap, the bird trap. Dangerous seeds. At this moment, there is a movement in the counterbass, and of course, it's one moment connected with this content, which was not exactly intended, but it is the possibility of the words to connect with several sounds, to underline or give a certain perspective on the word. And one thing, of course, I think we talked yesterday about that she interrupts sometimes her speech. This is a way of stylization that which was necessary, which is not composed, but was it is in the libretto or already suggested. I have the libretto here if you are interested. But it gives a certain transparency to the text, this little stylization. If she would talk without this stylization at all, it would be too close for the sound. And then you have illustration.
Is this rhythmically written? I mean, the actor is more or less free.
She's free.
She is a period, but knowing that there are interruptions on her taste.
Yes, it's just written in the libretto as a line between the words.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that's spoken in the opera, or
yes, she's the only. But then I'm searching also for the singers. There is a moment where one of the singers is meeting her, and he recognizes her and said, you are here as well, yeah, you're still alive. And she said, yes, as you see, I'm here, yeah.
She's an actress.
Yes, she's an actress, yeah, wonderful actress. Yeah. And at this moment, I compressed the intervals of the singer, and I said, sing pianissimo, yeah. I compressed them to microtonal movements around one to get the possibility of this meeting between the speech, spoken word, and the sung.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we could maybe, should we?
I think so. It would be interesting.
Yeah.
Because this connection between the spoken voice and the singing voice is, of course, something very crucial in this confrontation of two convention.
Yes.
And how not to have a rupture in is very, very delicate topic, I think.
Yeah. Maybe then we should jump a little bit because it comes
like you want, or we see it later, like you prefer.
Towards the end. I think it would be good to jump.
You can jump and come back, eh?
I don't know.
We have.
What time is it now?
Yeah. Or we continue a little bit and then we jump. Yeah.
Okay, we keep this in mind.
J'envoie le son ici?
Yes.
I don't know.
This is already later now for the 7th, but doesn't.
You want to go back to 40?
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
Here, thank you. What you heard now, I want you to explain just shortly, and afterwards answer your question. Again, this kaleidoscopic principle you heard at the end. After the scene I described, where the intervals were compressed to microtones around, and the meeting with the actress. Remember that. After that, the singers, the soloists, they speak, and we just hear the choir in the harmonic progression we already heard before, but completely different in this glissando structure. Everybody is kept is present in the one sentence. One of them, he says just yes, no, yes, no, and the other one says I must, I have to, I must, and the other one. Everyone has his and is repeating that. Meanwhile, we hear the choir singing this Ne voluquerit flammarum munia mundi diffugiant. And at the end, then the sun comes. So then that's the moment where they don't communicate anymore. They just describe what they see. They are not anymore capable to talk to each other. Yes, that's the story. Do you have any questions? Yes, maybe this the kaleidoscope. We just to explain. What you heard at the end is, on one hand, a harmonic, a formal idea. I described it yesterday, but now I have the possibility to draw a little bit. I like to draw. So I have here like this, and here. And here I have one continuity of. So then I have here the other layer. So this, and then and so on. Yeah. This always thought as continuities, each layer. And then I read in that way. Next step is this. And I always connected. This was the thing. And of course, at the end you hear the result is, at the very end, a melodic line around. It's always one element, still one element repeated. It's a melodic element, microtonal, around an ascending or descending line, but very compressed. That's the kaleidoscope principle.
Sorry, again, how do you? I understand the continuity. And
yes.
The fragments.
Yes.
What is the result in this example? You would start there and then go there and then go there. Or how is it working in the end in the result?
So the result. Let's maybe can we project the score? The result is the combination between this state of the process and this through this one. I can. It depends how I define the continuity on one, and I could also connect this as two different continuities and insert a second sound, second layer. So can we? Yeah, if you turn the page now, let's see where this bar is repeated. Yes, here, and there is another. A new element coming, and this one is repeated later. So it comes from. There are many triads and movements downwards and sounds which lead to more noisy a harmonic trill with to the ponticello. So I could say this process goes towards a more complex sound, to a noisy sound, and this is a more, let's say, speaking gesture, spoken gesture. It depends how I define the gesture. But do you understand the idea? Yeah. Of course, this is now you can do it also more complex or less complex. And in the scene where the actress meets her ex-husband or the ex-husband meets the singer, Jacques meets his ex-wife. There is only one line, one single ascending line left. No more harmony. It's not any more harmonic function. Sometimes there are intervals added, like a fourth or fifth, and so. But it's just one sound left, but it goes through different instrumentation. It comes from the trombone and goes to the trumpet, to the woodwinds, or so it's constantly changed. Yes. Is there? Yeah. Is it clear? Was it clear now how I explained it? Or? Yes. Sorry.
How do you, so with large structures like this that are kind of seem timeless, are meant to seem timeless,
yeah,
could go forever,
yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
How do you deal with time?
Yeah.
When you say, okay,
yeah,
I've had enough of this spinning.
Yeah. It has. Yes, of course. It has to go to. For example, the end has to be quite. It has to hurt. How it's long and we had a discussion on. Quite early with the director. He said, couldn't we finish early after the scene with the spoken? I said, no, impossible. It's not the end. It has to go and to go and to go, but nowhere, because there is no more. But if I cut there, it's harmless somehow. But if there is still the energy until the end, insupportable insupportable. Yes, you have to somehow follow your instinct. How far you can go and break one thing. So this cannot be calculated. But of course, there are imagination of a concept compressing time or expanding, but finally it's also an experience. It depends what happens in this time. And it's like at the end you still see the Bruegel, but only from very narrow, so you don't recognize just the forms. You recognize, I think.
I can understand the dramaturgical problem of your dramaturge or your director, because it's like you go from the form dramaturgically recognizable of an opera with people speaking, and little by little you dissolve this completely, and it seems like endlessly. It's like you play with the dramaturgy itself, to have a dissolution of this dramaturgy. I find this of course very fascinating. But I had a question, because the picture, when you had this woman descending the stairs, making a long solo. Is there's another voice?
Yes.
There's another woman.
That's a duet,
it's
actually,
a duet
but she sings a different text, so she's somewhere.
So, and you create a kind of ambiguity. Is it a kind of way of shadowing each other or something like that?
Yes, but the idea
was said about this concept of duet, but it's like so.
They don't react on each other.
No, that's very interesting.
Each one is in his own story, and but they are very closely together, and sometimes the other one who is sitting with the bottle is carrying the sound of the other one further. It's actually a duet.
So please correct me if this is inaccurate, but overall I get the impression that this piece, you had a marvelous effort. You put a marvelous effort to make the work very pragmatic and very non-linear in terms of its structure, and it's very. I got the impression that it is meditative, but what I find fascinating of this work is that while the time flows, like inevitably, right? While the time flows, in that structure you try to make infinite possibilities, which repeats and which develops and so on. So I got really curious because I am rather familiar to your other works, but perhaps I've been missing that aspect in your other works as well. So I was curious whether if you can say some representative works that have this similar impression that I got, what would those be?
Yes, there are chamber music works like a preparation of this material, like the quintet for clarinet and string quartet, for example. And there is a duet for trombone and soprano, which was also some kind of preparation for the opera, which was the initial idea for this duet, Spazio Emergente.
In those large texture, we hear very clearly some kind of some kind of like the voice is the voice. The question is, when the voice, you hear element of the voice, really like in the texture of the orchestra, a very complex texture, or the chorus and plus the voice. Are you first drawing or writing the texture, the orchestra thing, and then picking some element that underline with the solist voice? or is it
Yes.
the reverse process that
Yeah.
you first write
Yeah.
let's say the solo, and then afterwards you
Yes.
build what is the kind of echoing or
Yes.
comment on
Yeah,
dit,
yeah.
des illusions sonores.
That's-
It's like sound illusion. That
Yes.
is it a voice? Is it not a voice? Is this kind of
Yes.
what comes first, or is it a double way working?
Yes. Sometimes the voice is first, but in this particular part, you mean in this stretched part, there was. I sometimes like to have one structure and insert something. So there is a given already composed structure, and to insert something and to underline certain phenomena and.
So it's like you pick up some lines in the texture,
Yes.
and that those
Yes,
lines
exactly.
are illuminated
Yes, in
by
this
the
case,
voice.
yes. In
It's
this
like-
case,
yeah.
yes.
It's like with
Yeah.
a torch that you,
Yeah.
you lines some element of
Yes.
the picture. Yeah.
Yes.
Who is the director? The
Stage director.
stage. Yeah.
Klaus Gut.
Klaus.
Klaus Gut. Yeah.
May I ask another question, please? It's very short. Are you planning to record this?
I hope next time it will be performed again in December, January, and I hope then we could do a recording. It would be nice, yes, because then
That
you
is a
don't have the
satisfying
possibility
answer.
for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always it's not so easy to record because if you would have to produce it just for a recording, it would cost too much. Yeah.
I have a question more about your process when you are working with the stage director
Mhm.
or other people that are involved in
Yes.
the project.
Yes.
How you see also your place as a composer in the
Yes.
case of dramatic work.
Yes. Sometimes it's difficult, as everybody knows. Sometimes you feel things are running without you, and you just try to save what, or to communicate your intention, and of course that's the machine opera. What I was talking before. But it's those are the luckiest moments if you have the feeling, yeah, there is something coming together, and you never know from a talk before, or you never know. You can understand each other perfectly on the drinking coffee, but doing the work, it's different. It's always, and it's, you never can predict what, if you, and that's why sometimes I would appreciate to work, to continue one work with the same people. I used to work often with Christoph Marthaler, and he is a director, he's a musician as well. And he never starts with an idea of an interpretation. He doesn't even care about the text. Sometimes, yes. Yeah. No, that's now a little bit exaggerated. But he comes and listen what the singer is rehearsing, or what, and then after 1 week he starts organizing things, and that's a wonderful approach for a composer. He never does something. He comes to you and says, "Do you think this is good? If I would need here a violent moment. Can we do that?" together with the composer. That's actually very luxury. And most of the time it's a little bit a fight.
I think
Sorry. What kind of fights did you have with Klaus Gut? I mean, I remember you were unhappy about one or two things, yes?
Yes.
And maybe you can say... Yeah, so maybe you can briefly say what kind of battles or fights or disagreements you have.
Yeah.
And then, because I recognize today, seeing the recording, that he is very right with one moment which you dislike, namely the committing suicide. You're completely against it, I know. I was also against it for a while, but now I think it really opens up a complete different world. And in terms of your music, it feels very right that right before this singer, the male singer is leaping into this, you know. So maybe you speak a little bit about this moment.
Yes. I have to say, of course, it was Klaus Gut is a very cultivated, very, very nice person, and there was no quarrel in the sense of no. But I also I told you I first I did not understand this suicide, but it's his decision, and I have to respect that. And we didn't even discuss that in principle. No, that's his decision, and somehow I know you can't, if you have to live, you have to collaborate, and you have to leave his the space for, and you can't just always be behind her. No, don't do this, don't do this, and he would of course stuck in a. But what we discussed, of course, about rehearsal time, I tried early enough to communicate to the singers my wishes, and he has a completely different approach to the things. He's very pragmatic, and he said to the singers, "You are the unlucky guy, and you are the this or that. You are the drinker, and you are the yeah." And he said, "Why do you tell this? I mean, it's completely. They have to find themselves singing, but not just it. What the rest is a cliche of a whole drunken guy or but of course, and then he told me, be patient, that's just for the beginning, then we forget it. But when I saw how grateful the singer was for this advice, I thought, well, maybe it's his approach, and it's pragmatism, which can be dangerous as well, because very often in opera you see this. I say one thing and I show it in another way, and the picture shows it and the music shows it. It's redundant, just redundance. But of course. Klaus Gut, he knows what he's doing. That's the second disagree was the length of the end, and in principle I never would accept just to shorten something. I mean, it's impossible even to propose such. I can't imagine. Even it was a part 2 years of my life. Even if I would feel I'm unsure, I would say to myself, be patient. Maybe it has to develop also. An interpretation has to develop, and you see, at the end, everybody came to me and said, "Now I know what you." Yes, of course, it's even too short. It could, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's difficult. It is difficult for a director to judge the time, because he's always hearing this piano reduction, and you can imagine how the piano reduction of those dump like Bruckner, yeah, and he can't have an idea of the reality of the sound. That's a problem of a first performance, of course. But he has to trust. I mean, he has to trust me, because and I'll trust him.
I think trust in any type of collaboration. Yeah. Trust. Yeah. There's two things for me when I collaborate: is trust, yeah, and esteem. You can fight. You can even work with somebody who don't find a sympathetic person, but you have to estimate. As soon as you lose esteem, yeah. No. Then somehow the project is lost.
The whole project is
because
lost.
Then you will be a kind of competition or whatever. If you don't have esteem, I mean, it's then better to work alone, or if you can. But trust and mutual esteem is the zero level on which you can build something.
Exactly. Yes.
This.
Yeah.
If suddenly you say, "Oh, this guy is not at all." You can disagree on idea. Of course, you disagree, because you have strong personalities, and both person wants something different. Probably, dramaturge will want some element on which can build, like conflict of personalities and contrast and characters and blah blah blah. And then, of course, you want something more subtle or more vague, or you are thinking. Tarkovsky is thinking like I don't know what film to give as an example, but you have different of perception, and sometimes in discipline, I don't know if you agree with that, but that there's a very basic things which are very, by essence, basic. Like opera, yes, it comes from Commedia dell'arte somehow. You have this in opera. You have this. Inside the medium, there is this very basic thing, like a Shakespearean play is based on character, on conflicts, on whatever, and this stays somehow in all the essence of the thing. If you want to do something different, like your time stretching at the end, it's totally against somehow these basic roots, But it's like Tarkovsky, it's against. The rules of the comedy, the basic comedy of how to. If you learn in cinema how to make a film, it's certainly you don't. You see film of Tarkovsky is exactly the opposite somehow. And so if you are in such kind of paradoxal things, of course, there you create some magic things and something new, and it's wonderful. But somehow you have to accept this statement, this conflict of interest.
Yeah. Of course, that's. Yeah.
And for me, what is the very interesting thing in the thing is exactly when this operatic form somehow dissolved, when it's very much more. It's very the moment there. Wow, I understand why this length is coming, and
I have a question about the vocal and singing technique, because this work is pretty obvious. It's different from Fama you showed yesterday for the technique singing. And here it's a proper opera with a lot of instruments and this big vibrato sometimes. I wonder if the fact you are aware the singers will be in this kind of singing had an influence or consequences on your instrumental writing?
Yeah. Yes. Of course. I knew who will sing, and I was curious how far I could go with the singers concerning the modulation of the sound, the vibrato or non-vibrato is a question which is hardly it's hard to handle. Now actually I prefer to give them an image. I don't tell it technically because they understand more than me. But I try to describe it technically, not technically, no, as a gesture, with an image, with a metaphor, and sometimes you reach. I mentioned yesterday this problem of the dynamic, because in this scene where they meet, and of course the dynamic. Everything is dependent on each other. The dynamic, you can't have a microtonal structure if you have a huge vibrato or a high dynamic. Technically impossible. The second thing is the microtonal sounds. I remember one composer asked me. I think I spoke to Enno Poppy with about the fact, and he said, actually, why always quarter tones sound wrong? Yes, vocal. Yeah, that's a phenomenon. That's so wrong means the shift of the color, and there is something advises you this is not in the body of the singer. But this is a question of practicing and being finding a place in the body for this pitch, for each. It's a matter of practice, and don't you think that?
No. I agree. I agree. But if you see a singer, he's trained all his life to have perfect, say, pitch, and like I said, the limit with the pop or more not classical trained singer is maybe this jump of intervals where they don't arrive exactly. It's what they trained all their life. So you ask a quarter tone. Of course, you must be careful. You must know somehow why you take a risk. And why you ask this risk. And also, if you see culture where not our pitch are reached, like say for example Persian music or Oriental music, where they are using these things. And by changing the information, very fresh from this because personal things, but they are trained, and there is a moment where the master says, forget and just go by instinct around this. You have to find the instinctive way to find those modified pitches. And it's no more something analytic where you say, okay, we'll play this F but a little bit sharper because it's you have to find these instinctive things, and if it's not that, it's less important than to have to find these things. But of course, in a texture like this, I imagine I was wondering, how your singer find a way. I was wondering if they have a diapason somewhere in the pocket to find this, because my God, to find your pitch in this texture.
It was only one scene where I used microtones, but you're right. Even in the other scenes, it's not easy to. And it was the case that one singer, she's a fantastic. She's from Paris, a fantastic singer, an incredible musician, and she came to me at the beginning and said, I don't have absolute pitch, and it's rhythmically quite demanding. I don't know if I can do it, and I said to her, be patient, try, and I'm sure you will. And my experience is also with the singers without absolute, they have the same, absolutely the same flexibility, the same possibilities than with absolute. It's just the speed how you learn something. With the absolute, you learn it a little bit faster. But she was, she did it great. It's really Elsa Dreissig is a.
Do your singer relay on some pitch given in the orchestra?
Yes,
probably.
Yes,
so they have this thing, because quite often you have this anticipation.
Yes, for one, I had to find a compromise. For one entrance he said he doesn't find the pitch in the cluster if the violin could play louder for him, and if he could wait a little bit, and I did this. So why not? I mean, we always find a possibility. That's
another aesthetical question about this, more general, is when you need signals, cues, hooks, or whatever, things like that. One way is to interleave it in the compositional act. So if you need a signal, well, it can be given from the conductor, of course. This is the most natural way of doing, but also could be somehow included in the score, and pre-integrated. You say, okay, this guy will need this. Maybe I can give him the cue. The same for complex rhythmical structure. You give signals, but in the score.
Yeah. Yes, but I would be anyway. As you said, I would be. I would take care about microtonal circuit, not without jumping. But if you have a movement, and yes, I wanted to tell you, I had one crucial experience years ago, and this brought me on a certain idea. A singer, I did a concert with a Klangform, and she was too low, and I showed her higher, and she came to me, and not during the concert, and she came to me and said, "Please don't do that. I hear myself, but if I press, I get stuck here. So if I think higher, it means that's very, very bad. So it's the imagination of a sound is not to press it from higher, but to come from the other side. Yes, and then I learned actually how this imagination of a quarter tone, it's not just a E higher or like it is written. You have to find the proper place for that.
So now you do this.
Sometimes they think about like a voyal
yes.
modulation. They just like change. They just change the vowel and they have it perfectly. This is amazing.
Yes, if somebody is stressed as well,
it's not
also
higher or lower. It's another color. Just
a vowel, of course. Intonation is depending on vowels. Yes, that's true as well. But yeah, if you are aware of that, you can also adjust an intonation where you have the feeling now it's a perfect. There are perfect intervals. Yes, but you are right. It's also depending on vowels.
It's also depending from where you come. For some scale ragas in Indian music, some microtones are only reaches going with movement downwards. For example, in some raga you have this. So it means that you can reach this, but going from down, and not you don't ask. Or in the raga you don't have the same microtonal if you go up. So this is, of course, I don't know. The mental representation of the thing is very.
Yeah. And maybe one thing came now in my mind too. It was also a very good experience here. I asked myself why some singers are very easy to understand. The one I understood the best was a Turkish-speaking singer. So he's actually not German speaking. He sings German here, but he's German. He's perfect. And then it's a technical thing to come to the language, to not to always stay in your best resonance in, but to come to the language is also a technical problem, like in intonation.
And just a last question: when you play with microtone, are you considering them organized by, for example, the overtone of a fundamental, or are they more phenomenon or that you this sound I would like it a little bit quarter tone or vibrating? Is it phenomenal?
Yes.
Phenomens, or are they built or calculate like spectral?
Both. Instrumentally, it's a harmonic progression. But in the already mentioned scenes, it is a little bit higher, a little bit lower. So it's
maybe also
around,
ornamental or structural or ornament. Okay.
Coming back to this experience with the Turkish singer singing perfectly German, how do you work with, like in Lotofagos, when you are working with a language which is not either your mother language?
Yes.
How you do proceed?
Yeah, that's of course can be problematic. So I wouldn't compose Russian because I don't speak Russian at all. But unfortunately, but Spanish, yes. So I'm quite experienced, and I can read very well Spanish. So I speak Italian and French. So I somehow have to have a connection to the language, of course. Yes. But that's a question: how far can you compose a language which you don't speak as a mother language? That's yes.
So in this direction, you don't consider a translation?
Yes, I did.
Yeah?
Yes, I did. But for Lotofagos, for example, I mean, this is.
I understand.
Yeah.
there is also something that in the nature of the in the nature of the language, they are very distinctive. For example, Japanese is the most clear. The triangle of the voyelle is at the extremities in autophony. And the most Flemish language, some part of the Flemish language, is the most diphthong with everything. There is no pure voyelle. Everything is always, I don't know exactly the term, but in English, but c'est toujours diphthong. It's always like a if you hear this. So it's the most different things. So imagine, and French, for example, is probably in somewhere in the between, while Spanish, Italian are much more close to the Spanish, but then it's the consonant. You have to see once in this triangle, and of course, German language. It's not at all like you have a lot of sounds which are complex sounds, some are complex like
consonants,
and not so clear as the Japanese, where you have the pure dental, the pure labial, and the pure and the pure a, I, o.
I have
and so it creates a different. Or you.
But for me this is like really theoretical approach because, for example, in Spanish, and the phenomenon is really different because I am a Spanish native speaker and I totally understand a Chilean, a Spanish, a Mexican, or Colombian, but we speak so much different. Which different word. Which in Argentina there are words existing in Colombia which we don't use ever, never. But we understand. So when it comes into the accent factor, when it comes to the music, you need to deal with this.
But if you see,
that's not. Sorry. There was an example here. You heard. I suppose you did not. It didn't disturb you, as long as you don't speak German. But if the French singer says, "Ich suchte die Wärme," that's French, but it's not German. Die Wärme, it's completely different. So
that's totally my point.
If you listen to Peleas with the Brussels accent, I can tell you it's another story. People would be dead of laughing.
Yes.
I could do once La Fable de la Fontaine en bruxellaire et vous allez voir qu'est-ce que ça donne. It's totally, it's the same language, but it's not the same music. Or it makes a ridiculous thing or whatever. Sorry.
Totally. But
probably in Spanish too.
What to do in that cases? So it's really difficult when you have like a singer or which is not capable to achieve this.
If you have a Swiss, you are Swiss, but Swiss German deep accent, probably very different from German. You are listening in Bremen or whatever.
It's very different.
It's very different. So probably you have also this kind of.
Yes, and the place in the body, the resonance is different.
That's also something
in Swiss German. We have a lot of sounds here.
But in French opera singing, on roule les airs. Which create for normal audience which is not used to this thing. If you see a French melody of Forêt like that, it creates immediately this. Yes, it's a convention. Nobody speaks like that. And so it creates this, and I think all this is in. For me, all this thing is in question in the contemporary opera. Because we are used now to voice the film voice, with the radio voice, rock or pop voice. All these different voices are not necessarily fitting in dans la diction, in the eloquence of the opera. So all this is. Anyhow. What time is it? Okay. We have to thank you so much for this wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.